Most people save for retirement the same way they brush their teeth. It becomes automatic. You do it without thinking, year after year. In your 20s, you start contributing to your 401k. In your 30s, it feels like second nature. By your 40s, you increase your contributions almost every year. By your 50s, maxing out your retirement accounts is simply part of your routine. But here's the question almost no one ever asks. When are you actually done? According to research from Ebrey and Greenwald Research, nearly 8 out of 10 retirees say they ended up with either more money than they needed or about as much as they expected. In other words, many people didn't just save enough. They kept saving long after they already had enough. At the same time, Bankrate's 2025 survey found that 58% of American workers believe they're behind on retirement savings. Yet when you look at the numbers for people in their 50s and 60s who have invested consistently for decades, a surprising percentage have already reached the point where their retirement is essentially funded. They just don't realize it. They're still making contributions, even though investment growth has become the real engine of their wealth. They're postponing retirement, waiting for a feeling of certainty that may never arrive. In this video, we're going to identify the exact financial milestone that tells you when saving for retirement is no longer the factor determining your future. You'll see the math behind it, the numbers that matter, and why continuing to save beyond that point often adds very little extra financial security while costing something far more valuable, your time. If you've ever wondered whether you're working longer than you actually need to, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear this. Let's get started. For most people, retirement investing begins with one simple rule: never stop. Contribute to your 401k. Capture the full employer match. Increase your savings whenever you get a raise. For the first 15 or 20 years, that's exactly the right strategy. Your portfolio is still relatively small. Investment returns aren't large enough to move the needle on their own. Your contributions are doing almost all of the heavy lifting. Then, somewhere between year 15 and year 25, something remarkable begins to happen. And most people never notice it. Your investments reach a size where the money they earn each year becomes greater than the amount you're adding yourself. Imagine you're contributing $18,000 every year. With a portfolio worth $250,000, a 7% annual return generates about $17,500. But once your portfolio grows to $350,000, that same 7% return produces roughly $24,500. Without changing anything, your investments are now adding more money than you are. That's the moment the balance starts to shift. Compounding quietly takes over. Yet most people continue saving exactly as they always have because no one ever tells them that the math has changed. According to the Federal Reserve's 2025 survey of household economics and decision-making, only 35% of adults who haven't retired believe they're on track with retirement savings, even though 61% already own tax-advantaged retirement accounts. The issue isn't that people aren't saving. The issue is that very few people know how to measure when they've saved enough. So they stay on autopilot. They keep contributing because they're afraid to stop, not because the numbers actually require it. And that hesitation comes with a hidden cost. Every extra year you work only to keep adding money to a retirement plan that's already capable of reaching your goal is another year you could have spent differently. Maybe you could have shifted to part-time work, taken a sabbatical, traveled more, spent more time with your parents while they're still healthy, or simply been more present for your children before those years disappear. The real question isn't just, how much do I need? It's this: when have I earned the freedom to stop? The answer comes down to 3 numbers, not emotions, not opinions, not what a financial influencer tells you, just 3 numbers you can calculate. The first is your retirement spending target. Notice that this isn't based on what you earn today. It's based on what you'll actually spend once you're retired. For many people, retirement expenses naturally decline. The daily commute disappears. Work clothes are no longer necessary. The mortgage may be paid off, and children are often financially independent. Research from Fidelity also shows that spending tends to decrease as retirees get older. On average, spending stays around 100% of baseline between ages 65 and 74, falls to about 89% between ages 75 and 84, and drops to roughly 73% after age 85. So if you estimate needing $80,000 a year throughout retirement, your actual spending could be closer to $70,000 during your 70s and around $60,000 later in life. But to keep our calculations conservative, let's assume you'll need the full $80,000 every year. year. The second number is your guaranteed income. This includes Social Security, pensions, lifetime annuities, or any other income that arrives regardless of what the stock market does. In 2025, the average annual Social Security benefit is roughly $22,000. If you earned a higher income during your career or delayed claiming benefits, that figure could easily reach $30,000 or even $40,000 per year. Let's assume you'll receive $30,000 annually from Social Security. That means your investment portfolio only needs to provide the remaining $50,000 each year. And that brings us to the third number, your safe withdrawal rate. This is where everything starts coming together. Bill Bengen, the creator of the original 4% rule, recently revisited his research using decades of additional market data and multiple asset classes. His updated analysis suggests that, under certain conditions, retirees may be able to withdraw as much as 4.7% annually while maintaining a high probability of long-term success. At the same time, firms like Charles Schwab recommend taking a more conservative approach depending on your retirement timeline, expected market conditions, and personal risk tolerance. Now, let's put those three numbers together. If your retirement portfolio needs to generate $50,000 a year and you use a 4.5% withdrawal rate, the math is simple. $50,000 divided by 4.5% comes out to about $111 million. That means if your annual spending goal is $80,000 and Social Security covers $30,000 of it, you only need about $1.1 million invested to support the rest. Now comes the important part. If your portfolio is already worth $1.2 million, you've reached roughly 108% of your target. You've crossed the finish line. If you've accumulated $1.5 million, you're sitting at about 135% of what you need. Your retirement is more than fully funded. And if you've built a $2 million portfolio, you're close to 180% of your target. At that point, the extra years you're working may no longer be funding your retirement. They may simply be increasing the inheritance you eventually leave behind. Even after seeing numbers like these, many people still hesitate. They think, what if we have another financial crisis like 2008? What if I live to 100? What if healthcare costs skyrocket? Those are reasonable concerns, but it's worth looking at what the evidence actually says. Research published by the CFA Institute found that retirees with diversified portfolios, not portfolios invested entirely in the S&P 500, and who make small adjustments during market downturns, dramatically improve their chances of success. The probability of running out of money falls from roughly 17% to only about 2% or 3%. What kinds of adjustments? Temporarily cutting discretionary spending by around 10%, putting off a major purchase for a year, making small, flexible decisions rather than sticking to a rigid plan regardless of market conditions, because retirement isn't managed by a spreadsheet. It's managed by people, and people adapt. There's another side to this conversation that's equally important. The Federal Reserve's research shows that many older Americans remain financially vulnerable, but in most cases, the reason isn't that they overspent after retiring. It's that they never had access to workplace retirement plans, couldn't consistently invest throughout their careers, or experienced major financial setbacks along the way. For households that have been steadily contributing to retirement accounts for 20 years or more, the challenge is often completely different. It isn't saving too little. It's recognizing when they've already saved enough. Think about it this way. If your retirement plan already has a 95% chance of succeeding, continuing to save until that probability reaches 97% doesn't fundamentally change your future. It only adds a little more certainty. But what does that extra 2% cost? Maybe another year at a job you've already outgrown, less time with your grandchildren, the trip you've been talking about for years but keep postponing, or the opportunity to work fewer hours doing something you genuinely enjoy instead of spending every week counting down to retirement. There's another reality that many people overlook. Your years of active retirement are more limited than your total years of retirement. Not because life expectancy is short, because your highest energy years don't last forever. Research cited in the Journal of Financial Planning found that retirees' spending often declines significantly after roughly the first 15 years of retirement. That makes intuitive sense. Your 60s and early 70s are often filled with travel, hiking, cruises, family vacations, and experiences you've waited decades to enjoy. By your late 70s and 80s, many people naturally spend more time closer to home, visiting family, enjoying hobbies, reading, or gardening. Both stages can be deeply fulfilling, but they usually require very different amounts of money. And yet, countless people in their late 50s continue working extra years to increase their retirement balance they'll likely never fully spend, all while the things that matter most quietly change. Health isn't quite the same. Energy starts to fade. Parents grow older. Friends move away or pass on. Time becomes more valuable than another percentage point of financial security. So if you're 58 years old and your portfolio has already reached 130% of your retirement target, the question isn't simply whether you should keep saving. It's whether you're willing to trade some of your healthiest, most active years for a larger account balance you probably won't ever need. Ultimately, reaching financial freedom comes down to three simple conditions. First, your portfolio should comfortably exceed the amount you actually need, ideally by about 20% to 30%. That margin provides room for market volatility, unexpected expenses, and the reality that life doesn't always follow a perfect plan. Second, your investments should now be growing faster than the amount you're contributing each year. If a $1.5 million portfolio is generating around $70,000 annually while you're adding only $25,000, your wealth is being driven primarily by compounding, not by new contributions. And third, you've considered taxes. If most of your retirement savings are sitting in traditional IRAs or 401ks, remember that those balances are pre-tax dollars. A portfolio worth $1.5 million on paper isn't necessarily $1.5 million you can spend. Required minimum distributions, federal income taxes, and possibly state taxes all reduce the amount that's ultimately available for your lifestyle. If all three of those conditions are true, you've reached the point where your retirement is financially self-sustaining. From there, everything becomes a personal decision. You can keep working because you genuinely enjoy what you do. You can continue building wealth because leaving a larger legacy matters to you, but you no longer have to keep grinding simply because you're afraid you don't have enough. Financial freedom isn't defined by reaching a certain birthday or chasing an arbitrary account balance. It's the moment your portfolio becomes strong enough to carry your future without depending on your paycheck anymore. In the beginning, you're the one doing all the heavy lifting. Every dollar you save, every raise you invest, every sacrifice you make is what moves your future forward. But if you stay consistent long enough, something remarkable happens. There comes a real, measurable point where your investments start doing more work than you do. Compounding becomes the engine. Your contributions become optional. And that's the moment you've truly reached financial freedom. From that point on, your mission is no longer to build the portfolio. It's to enjoy the life that portfolio was built to support. If this video helped you see your retirement picture more clearly, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more practical, no-nonsense financial insights. And let me know in the comments, after seeing the numbers, were you closer to financial freedom than you expected? Or do you still have some ground to cover? This is Finance Haven, where smart financial decisions create lasting financial freedom.